At this point, if I were spinning tzitziot, I would have the proper intentions in my head, and I would also say l'shem mitzvah tzitzit before spinning.
We're about to start the process of shazirah. Shazirah is the process that twists together the finely spun threads to create the large, thick thread that we actually use to make tzitzit. This machine here allows us to actually do the process of shazirah, or winding together. It's all going to be done by hand, and what happens is we have the wheel here. As the wheel turns, can you see how these threads start to turn? Okay. What's going to happen is that he'll be turning this thread. It's all done l'shem mitzvah tzitzit.
L'shem mitzvah tzitzit.
And this is the final chut tzitzit, and this is the same process that's used for white as well as for blue.
I'm here now with Rav Eliyahu Tevger, one of the founders of our Amuta and the person who taught us all that we know about the Tekhelet, who is going to help us do the tying of the tzitzit.
L'shem mitzvah tzitzit.
Before placing the strings into the tzitzit in the corner, one must say l'shem mitzvah tzitzit. When we tie with the white, we are remembering the way that we tied with the Tekhelet. When we tie with the Tekhelet, there are many different ways in which one can tie, based on different Talmudic passages which were understood by the Gaonim, by the sages, and by the Rishonim, people such as the greats as Maimonides and Rashi.
If Tekhelet was so important to Am Yisrael, so important that 3 times a day in the Shema, the Jews say the word Tekhelet and ask that we have Tekhelet on our garments, how could it be that it was forgotten? And that brings us to the Roman Cardo, the ancient Roman street in the middle of the old city. And truthfully, it was the Romans that started the demise of Tekhelet. First of all, the year 70, the temple was destroyed, the city of Jerusalem was destroyed, and finally Eretz Yisrael was decimated. And that meant the Jews were exiled. Where were they exiled to? They were exiled to Babylon. In Babylon, they didn't have access to the Mediterranean. They didn't have access to the snails that create Tekhelet. Secondly, by the year 380 or so, the Romans declared that anybody wearing these expensive garments, other than Caesar himself and some of the generals, should be put to death. Thirdly, the tremendous expense of these garments made it impossible for an impoverished Jewish community to afford them. And finally, the Arab conquest of the entire Middle East put an end to this ancient craft of dyeing with Tekhelet. Our story begins in the 1880s, when the Rediscovering Rebbe decided that the Messiah couldn't come until we had Tekhelet. So he studied all the sources, and he made a trek to Italy, to the Mediterranean, and he went into the ocean, and he said, I found it. What did he find? He found a squid. It took him a long time, and finally was able to produce some sort of a blue dye. Many of his Hasidim wore it, but it generally wasn't accepted by the religious population of Europe at the time. Came along Rav Herzog. Rav Herzog was the first chief rabbi of the state of Israel, and he wrote his doctoral thesis on Tekhelet. Rav Herzog studied the Rediscovering as well as all the secular, religious, and chemical, and historical, and archaeological sources, and he was able to look at the Rediscovering dye and disprove it for many reasons. The bottom line was Rav Herzog was convinced that it had to come from a mollusk, and in the majority of his research he found there was only one snail that it could be, and that was the Murex trunculus. And after 80 years of research since Rav Herzog, with chemical advances and historical and archaeological research, a person by the name of Rav Eliyahu Tevger went to the ocean 7 or 8 years ago, found the snails, studied the sources, went to the Chemical Institute, learned how to dye, and 3 of us joined him at the ocean one day, collected some snails, and started producing the Tekhelet. And that's how Amutat Patil Tekhelet was formed, the Patil Tekhelet organization.
Here we saw the opportunity to actually bring back a commandment in the Torah, bring back a mitzvah in the Torah that has been lost for 1,300 years. And I think since that day on the beach, the 4 of us, we all decided that this is the opportunity to actually take something that God commanded the Jews on Mount Sinai, that's been lost for 1,300 years, and to bring it back to the Jewish people.
Color is an emotional experience. Tekhelet is the emotional reminder of the bond between ourselves and Hashem, and how we wish to get closer to Hashem with Ahavat Hashem, the love of Hashem, the love of Torah and mitzvot.
Our journey's taken us on a trek of thousands of miles. We've been on the mountains, we've been in the water, we've been in the chem labs. But what's it all about? Is it all about just making a color from a snail that's found in the Mediterranean? Really not. Tekhelet is a world in and of itself, and much more than just a blue thread. So the next time you read the Shema or kiss your tzitzit, hopefully it's going to make a little bit of a difference. Why is that? because the blue of Tekhelet brings you to think about the ocean, and the depth of the ocean reflects the infinity of the sky, and the endlessness of the sky really brings you to think about the creator of the universe.